In a small village nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there lived a man whose reputation was as strange as it was dreadful. Bluebeard, as he was known, was wealthy, powerful, and terrifying to most. His name alone brought whispers among the villagers, for his bright blue beard stood out like a mark of doom. Bluebeard had been married several times before, but none of his wives were ever seen again, and nobody knew their fates. It was a mystery that weighed heavy on the hearts of the villagers. Not far from Bluebeard's mansion lived a woman with two beautiful daughters. The two girls were admired by all who knew them, and their beauty was the talk of the village. One day, Bluebeard visited the mother with an offer that chilled her to the bone. He proposed to marry one of her daughters, leaving it up to the mother to choose which one. The girls were horrified at the thought, for Bluebeard's strange, repulsive beard and the dark rumors surrounding him were enough to turn anyone away. Neither daughter agreed to marry him. But Bluebeard was persistent. His wealth, power, and influence could not be ignored. In time, he invited the mother and daughters to his estate for a week's stay. He promised them lavish meals and entertainment, a chance to experience the grandeur of his wealth. Reluctantly, the family agreed, and off they went, journeying to Bluebeard's grand country seat. The house was magnificent, full of marble floors, gilded ceilings, and a garden that seemed to stretch on forever. But as the days passed, the girls grew uneasy, unable to shake the nagging sense that something was wrong. Yet, in the end, it was the younger sister, overwhelmed by the luxury and persuaded by Bluebeard's persistence, who agreed to marry him. She became Bluebeard's latest bride, leaving her sister to stand by in sorrow and worry. After a month of marriage, Bluebeard gave his wife a chilling command. He told her that he was going away on business for a time, a journey that would keep him away for at least 6 weeks. Before leaving, he gave her 3 keys. The first was for the treasure room, where gold and silver chests filled the space. The second opened the caskets containing his vast wealth. The third, a tiny golden key, was for a small closet, a room he forbade her to enter. He told her that under no circumstances should she use the key to open the closet. If she did, there would be dire consequences. With a heavy heart, Bluebeard left for his journey, leaving his wife behind in his grand castle. The moment his carriage disappeared from sight, the neighbors came rushing to visit the castle. They were eager to see the riches, to admire the beauty that filled the mansion's many rooms. They took delight in the wealth surrounding them, marveling at every opulent corner of the estate. Meanwhile, Bluebeard's wife could not shake the curiosity that gnawed at her. What could be behind that closet door? Why was it the only place in the castle she wasn't allowed to see? At first, she tried to ignore the temptation, but it only grew stronger. She decided to visit the closet, just to take a quick peek. With trembling hands, she inserted the tiny key into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a sight that would haunt her forever. The floor was covered with dark, clotted blood. The walls were lined with the bodies of Bluebeard's previous wives, their throats slit and their faces frozen in horror. She gasped, a wave of terror rushing through her, but it was too late. The damage was done. In a panic, she slammed the door shut and locked it again. Her hands were shaking as she tried to clean the blood off the key, but it was no use. The stain remained, stubborn and unyielding. Her heart raced as she realized the terrible secret that Bluebeard had kept hidden from her, and the horrific fate that awaited those who disobeyed him. When Bluebeard returned from his journey 6 weeks later, he immediately asked for the keys. His wife handed them over reluctantly, and when he saw the bloodstain on the tiny golden key, his face darkened with fury. He had known all along that she would disobey him, and now the consequences were clear. His cold eyes gleamed as he told her that she would meet the same fate as his previous wives. The idea of her death filled him with cruel satisfaction. Bluebeard's wife, trembling with fear, begged him for one last chance. Please, let me pray, she pleaded. Allow me to say my final prayers before you end my life. Bluebeard, ever so ruthless, agreed to give her some time, but he was not patient. The minutes stretched into hours, and still, Bluebeard's wife could not think of a way to escape. She turned to her sister, Anne, who lived nearby, and pleaded for her to climb the tower and look out for their brothers, who were supposed to be coming that day. The soldiers were her only hope. As Anne climbed the tower, the wife called out, "Are they coming? Are my brothers coming to save me?" But each time, Anne responded with the same answer, "No, they are not here yet." The minutes passed like hours. The sound of Bluebeard's anger grew louder. His voice boomed through the halls, making the castle tremble. Finally, he could take no more. He bellowed with rage, and the sound echoed across the estate. His wife had no choice but to come downstairs and face him. Bluebeard seized her roughly by the hair, ready to bring his cutlass down on her. But just as he raised his weapon, there was a knock on the door. The heavy doors of Bluebeard's castle were flung open, and in rushed two horsemen, her brothers. They had come at last, having been delayed by circumstances beyond their control. With swift precision, they unsheathed their swords and advanced toward Bluebeard. The moment Bluebeard tried to flee, the brothers were upon him. With one well-placed strike, they pierced his heart, and he fell to the ground, lifeless. Bluebeard's wife, still weak from the ordeal, struggled to lift herself from the floor. She remained there, exhausted, too weary to rise and greet her brothers. Her body trembled, and her breath was shallow as she realized she had escaped death by a hair's breadth. With Bluebeard's death, the castle was now hers. His property and wealth, which had once been his, were passed to his wife. The money that had once been used to feed Bluebeard's evil ambitions now went to good use. Part of it was used to arrange a marriage for her sister Anne, who had always been loved by a kind man from the village. And finally married the man of her dreams, a man who had loved her long before her sister had married the cruel Bluebeard. For Bluebeard's wife, however, the journey was far from over. Though she had inherited his riches, the shadow of the past still hung over her. She could never forget the horrors she had witnessed, the lives that had been lost, and the terrible secret that had nearly claimed her own life. The villagers, once terrified of Bluebeard's name, now rejoiced in his downfall. They saw in his end a clear lesson: the consequences of sin are inevitable. Bluebeard had murdered his wives, believing he could escape retribution, but in the end, he was brought down by his own cruelty. His wealth and power had been useless, for he had no heirs, no family to carry on his name. As for his wife, she learned that the truth would always find its way to the surface, no matter how hard one tried to bury it. She lived the rest of her life in peace, knowing that she had freed herself and her sisters from the curse that had haunted them for so long. The story teaches us that those who commit evil will eventually meet their own downfall. The truth cannot be hidden forever, and those who live by cruelty will find that their actions lead only to ruin. If you like the story, then do subscribe, share and press the bell icon for more interesting stories.